And what the guarantee is, it's us standing behind our work. Over the last year, 43% of our placements have been diverse candidates. B is a Dana, which is a Mastiff crossed with a Great Dane.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Crownsmen Show. I'm your host, Jared Downey, and joining me today is Gowdy Molina. Good morning.
Good morning.
Checking your computer.
Yes, there was a little weird thing happening there, but we're good. We're good.
It is one of those mornings. But thank you for keeping everything rolling down the tracks. Today we have DHR International. Brian Arthur is going to be joining us. Brian is I'm going to make sure I get this right, managing partner for Western Canada, and a member of the North American executive team. So I'll actually get Brian to explain what
Yeah.
exactly that means. Before we get into it, who is sponsoring our show today?
Alrighty. So today we have Savannah Equipment. Savannah Equipment supplies new and used mining equipment around the world, from placer to underground to ore processing plants. They have gold concentrating tables, trommels, and mineral jigs in stock now to take advantage of the high gold prices. You can visit them at savannahequipment.com, where you will find more equipment every day. Of course, we also have Power Zone Equipment. When you need a specialized team of world-class engineers for your oil and gas pipelines, dewatering, or any fluid handling needs, you want to visit powerzone.com. In addition to their inventory of rebuilt pumps, motors, engines, they also have an amazing team to design and engineer your systems, no matter the challenge, no matter the location. Get in the zone with PowerZone. Visit them at powerzone.com. Also, tell your company's story to thousands of heavy industry professionals every week. Use Crownsman interviews to communicate technical information and to demonstrate your company's leadership within your sector. In 2021, small operations and large corporations need a reliable interview process and a large platform to communicate. In North America alone, over 8.5 million minutes of Crownsman shows have been watched online. You can join as a company, join as an expert, be part of the Crownsman network. More details at crownsman.com. There we go.
Thank you very much, Gowdy. Brian, we're going to jump right into the interview. I think we're going to start with your title because I almost made it through it. But you wear a couple hats. Can you sort of outline what your role is within the company, and then in doing so, explain who DHR is for people that don't know?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you, Jared. I appreciate you inviting me on. And you did pretty well with the title. It is a mouthful, to say the least. So I am the managing partner of Western Canada, and I wear a second hat. I sit on our North American Executive Committee, which is made up by 7 members throughout North America. Actually, I'm the only Canadian. The rest are in the U.S. DHR International, we are an executive search firm, helping organizations find the right talent for those key roles. And I'm certainly looking forward to not only talking about DHR, but also the executive search in general, which a lot of your viewers and listeners might not be overly familiar with.
Yeah, I have quite a few questions because I think anybody within the industries that we're covering knows there's some challenges in finding people. One of the things that I was wondering coming into this interview is, do you think the internet has been used for now? It seems like it's been around forever, but 30 years ago, that's not how people were finding recruiting. Has it made it easier or harder with this? I mean, so much of it is based online, and DHR is obviously part of facilitating that. Has it made it easier to facilitate finding the right executive?
Yeah, I think there's absolutely no question the internet has made everything easier in all of our lives, and recruitment is absolutely no different. Gone are the days of having a card catalog of all of the contacts. The challenge is still being able to connect to the right people at the right time, and actually have them answer your call. So just being able to find the people online, that's part of it. That's the first step in the equation. And I think where the expertise of a professional comes in, is actually being able to engage with that person and to get them across the finish line into that new role.
You're when you start the recruitment process, the one are you looking? Do do you first go to people that are you see on like LinkedIn, they've got all those what is it called? Open to work or
Mm.
open to opportunities or something like that. What are you sort of looking for in those initial stages when you're trying to fill a position for a client?
Yeah, the reality, Jared, is we work for companies. The organizations are our clients, and we're going out to find very specific people with a very specific skill set, and typically at that senior level, at the vice president and up, and into the board. Um, we're looking for people that not only possess the technical expertise. That's really table stakes just to get into just the price of admission. It really is about the fit, and that's what our clients are paying us for. So, although we are interested in people that are open to making a change, in reality, the vast majority of people that we put into positions are gainfully employed, are doing great things where they currently are, and aren't looking to make a move. They're the top 10%,
Mm.
and they're not thinking about any change until we come along, tap them on the shoulder, and suggest the grass could be greener, or they may have skills that could be better used elsewhere.
Something that the other thing that I was wondering is when employers come and a few things about DHR that I really want to get into. You have the a 2-year guarantee, and it's sort of unique to DHR, and I want to get into that. But I was wondering, when employers are coming to you, do you work with them to develop a clear picture of who they are looking for, or most companies coming and they have a very clear vision of, I mean, even personality and things like that? I'm just trying to understand that process because, of course, we've done hiring before, and some of it's been successful, some of it has definitely not been successful. And there's so many factors to take into place. Are you helping them piece that together on that initial who they're looking for, or where do you sort of come in?
Yeah, we do, and it certainly is our goal to do that because it's going to lead to a more successful outcome. And we've all had those experiences where sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And unfortunately, people are strange creatures, and they wake up in the morning and sometimes they do funny things, and it's almost impossible to have all of the data in advance. But the more data you can get, the better decision you're going to make. So when we sit down with a client at the onset of a search, the goal is really to understand as much as we possibly can, as much as we can about the role itself, but also about the culture, about the leadership characteristics of the individual they're going to report into. We want to understand the team that's going to report into them. We need to understand their longer term goals, their 12 months out and also 5 years out, where they're going. Uh, we need to know what hasn't worked in the past, and we need to know what will work going forward, so we can make sure we find the right person. And some clients are very sophisticated and very astute, and they have spent a lot of energy internally to understand their succession planning and who makes a successful candidate. Others haven't, and we certainly help them through that process to make sure we're getting there. And um, it certainly is about helping our client get the best hire they can, but selfishly, it's also on us because we don't want to redo search work, and we only get invited back if we did a wonderful job, and we only get referred to other clients if we did a wonderful job. So the more energy we can place up front to make sure we get that fit, it's going to be a better outcome for everybody, ourselves included.
Kind of tying back into the whole internet thing, and you have LinkedIn, and then there's company culture, there's skill sets, and I'm just curious of, because there's so much online. I mean, you can almost draft an online profile that sort of fits the market that you want to go after nowadays. So what is the process of is there some sort of I mean, DHR specializes in it. So how do you sift through that online world, or any or people that's submitting it through a portals or however? How do you sift through all that sort of that cookie cutter stuff to actually identify if someone is qualified? And culture seems like it'd be one of the toughest ones to identify, but even skill set, because you can, I mean, skill is it's sort of a funny word, especially at the executive level. So is there an actual process that you go through to sift through that? So when you get inundated, when a position, or when you're not when you're looking for, when you're out there looking for someone, you can find probably 1,000 people that fit a profile. How do you siphon that down?
Yeah, well, you're right. You can certainly find a lot of people, and I think it's really important to remember that everything online, I shouldn't say everything, most things that are accessible online are put there by the individuals themselves.
Hmm.
And they're getting to paint the picture of what that looks like, which may or may not be reality. I mean, think of Instagram. If you look at Instagram, you safely assume that everyone had these wonderful lives and they looked perfect all the time, and their children were always perfectly well behaved and smiling for the camera. We know that's not true. So we really don't rely on what we see out there. When it comes to finding the candidates, that's the first step. Excuse me. We have a team of researchers. We have hundreds of researchers, and this is what they do for a living. They map companies, they figure out who's who, who's doing what, and who's doing it well. And when we kick off a search, we're of course going to go to those individuals we know as a first step. And at the same time, we're also going to go into the market doing new research to understand who are the best folks right now doing this at other organizations. And it really comes down to having a conversation. We still rely on the telephone heavily. For every search we do, we speak to literally hundreds of candidates, 300 to 600 candidates on average, to narrow it down to a short list that we're going to present to our client, ultimately narrowing it down to one hire. And the way that we work individuals through that funnel is by comparing them against each other, and also comparing them against the position spec that we develop with the client. What are we actually looking for? And we use that template as really to benchmark them against. But it goes beyond simply, researching the publicly available data out there. It is about conversations. It's about references. It's about assessment, and having multiple conversations to really appreciate whether what they've done in the past is going to be a good predictor for being able to succeed in the future.
There's something that you have that I think is unique. I mean, I'm not obviously not an expert in your field, but I saw on your online on your website. I think it's a 2 year guarantee. Is I think something that sort of makes you stand out. What exactly is that?
Yeah, well, I like to think there's lots of things that help us stand out, but our guarantee really is one of them. It's twice as long as just about every one of our industry peers out there. And what the guarantee is, it's us standing behind our work. And our work is sometimes a little bit funny to think about, because uh, the widgets with which we work are people. We are affecting human lives every single day, and when we place an individual into a role, um, as I said before, selfishly, we really need to make sure that they're successful. And because we're doing the due diligence up front to ensure that they're going to be the right fit and they're going to add value to our client, we stand behind that. We stand behind it for 2 years. If anyone leaves, either of their own choosing, or if they're asked to leave, we'll redo that search, and we redo that search, no questions asked, and we don't charge anything else for it. That's certainly the way we operate in this market. We have offices in nearly 30 countries. There are some nuances with what guarantees look like in other places, but by and large, we have a 2 year guarantee throughout North America.
Does that it, why does DHR have that in place? You see something like that, and I mean, I know just enough to know that that is a bit unique. And of course that leads into the assumption, well, if someone's going to give you a 2 year guarantee, which is not that's not a small amount of times. A lot of things that are beyond your control can happen within 2 years. What is it? Is there something very specific that gives the company, and you're sort of on the because you're part of that like the now I did it on the intro, but that's sort of that committee for the North American. What's it called?
Our executive committee.
The executive committee. So you're sort of seeing some of the bigger picture things as well. What is there something that the company is delivering that gives them that confidence that you can specifically identify that allows them to offer something like 2 years?
Well, I mean, you're right. A lot can go wrong, and as I said, people wake up and do funny things, and you never know how things are going to work out. Uh, I've only redone. I mean, I've been doing this for 16 or 17 years, and I've only redone. I mean, I can count on probably one hand the number of searches I've had to redo. And the reason is you do that upfront work, and it's harder. It takes more time in order to get to the point where you're going out into the market to kick off a search. Uh, the, the way I can describe it is really there's two types of recruitment that most people are familiar with. There's contingent recruitment, and there's retained recruitment, and they both have to do with how you pay for them. Contingent recruitment or contingency recruitment, 100% of the fee that you would pay to that recruitment firm is due when you place an individual. So they don't pay anything. The client doesn't pay anything until a hire is made. Retained executive search, you're not really paying for the individual. You're paying for the time in the process. And that's why there's a payment schedule throughout. So we're a retained executive search firm. And because of that, we only take on assignments that we know we're going to be successful with. And typically they're the more challenging and more senior level assignments.
Right.
We are not throwing spaghetti at a wall and hoping something sticks, and then moving on to the next one. The average search, and that's something else we're quite proud of at DHR, is less than 3 months, start to finish. We track it here in Western Canada. It's actually 78 days right now, and a big part of that is our clients and how quickly they're going to move candidates through their process. But because we spend the time up front, we're confident that we can stand behind that 2-year guarantee, and it's rarely something that is used. I think what it does is it offers peace of mind to our clients that are taking a leap of faith. Often, from a client's perspective, a company's perspective, they're excited to get this person in, and by the time we're invited into the conversation, they probably wanted this person a few months ago, and they want to move as quickly as they can, and they've got to. It's a high ticket item. If you want the best talent and you're going to pay to get it, it costs money. And so offering that 2-year guarantee, I think, offers some peace of mind to our clients that there's value, and you're going to see that value. And the individual is not just going to fill an empty position, fill a seat in your company. They're truly going to add value. They're going to add value from day one. And hopefully that guarantee never comes into play. And our experience would suggest that it rarely does.
Yeah, it would. I want to swing over to the individual because when you're talking about people that are working in the top 10%, that you're trying to get the top 10% moved over to another position that keeps them in the top 10%. So what's the motivator? Is it I mean, there must be some consistency. Does it generally come down to money, or is it culture? How do you get that person from a place of I'm working at the top level in this company, or is it position ranking? Is that a lot of times what you're trying to offer is to move someone up from where they are? What are sort of the different angles that you approach it from?
Yeah, I think it's different for everybody, although there certainly are some common themes. I think money is important, but it's not usually the deciding factor. You need to pay people a fair, reasonable amount of money for what they're doing. And at the level we work at, people people are paid well, and they're not going to walk across the street for a few more dollars. So it has to do with a lot more than money. Culture is a huge part of it. I think even more so in the past year. I mean, there's been some big changes. This is let's not kid ourselves, though. The world's pretty crazy right now. Leadership is a huge part of it. And anytime, over this past year, I think a lot of leaders, their true colors have shone through, and they that style might not work, and it likely isn't going to be what keeps them in their role. In fact, over half of the search work we've been doing over the last several months is confidential, because we're replacing people that don't know they're being replaced, and it comes down to their leadership skills. And so a lot of people are going to move for leaders to work with better leaders, a stronger board, people that give them more autonomy. I think there's also factors like diversity that are playing more and more into these decisions. So there's, I think people get up every morning, and you need to be excited about what you're doing. And if you're not, I would suggest you pull the covers back over your head and you try again the next day. But if you're going to get out of bed in the morning and you're going to go to work, you want to be happy. You want to be excited. You want to feel as though you're adding value. But you also want to feel as though you're being rewarded for the contributions you make. And certainly there's a financial component to that, but more so it's the people you get to work with, and the leaders that you're under and learning from. There's a lot of factors.
Yeah, I can hear your dog in the background. We should always ask people if they have dogs, and they should be allowed to. They should always make an appearance. We got a lot of dog fans here on the show.
I've got two puppies in the background that are rarely quiet.
Do we get to know what kind?
You certainly can. One of them is a sheepadoodle. That is King. He is, how old is he now? He's probably 7 or 8 months.
Wow. Okay.
And then we made the mistake one evening and decided to get another puppy. And B is the second puppy, and B is a Dana, which is a Mastiff crossed with a Great Dane.
Oh my goodness.
So B is 4 months old, and she's already over 60 pounds. And she will likely be well over 100 pounds in the near future.
Those two would not fit in my apartment.
Those two likely don't fit in anyone's.
I was going to say, where do they fit?
We love them dearly.
I think you barely fit in your apartment.
That's true. Okay, well, focus. It's going back to this thing of it sort of fascinates me at that level, the different reasons that people would leave, because like you said, they are compensated well in these positions. And it just, I mean, when you reach out to them, how do I say it? Is initially, in general, are they pretty open to the conversation? Like, let's say out of 100 people, they're all working at a high level, getting well compensated, but you don't maybe even know if there's something that's off with their culture or within the business or anything like that. But you reach out to them. Would 50 of them have a positive response, or do you need to coax most of them? I'm just curious about it.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know if coax is the right word. At least, we're not trying to sell someone something they don't want or they don't need. It really is about a conversation. So when we initially reach out to someone, we already know a lot about them. And that's what our research team does. We're going to know what their current organization is going through. We're going to know what buttons to potentially push, so that we can speak to those things and highlight the potential differences between the roles. And yeah, I don't know what the actual number is. I think most people are keen to talk to us, because even if it isn't today, they don't know what their world is going to look like in a year or 2 years. And so normally people are quite open to having a conversation with us to get on our radar. And it's through the conversation, through getting to know them, that we can identify how far we want to take the conversation. The first thing we do is not, put the position profile in front of them and say, "Are you interested?" It really is having a conversation with them, trying to understand whether they're someone we want to pursue or not,
Right.
and, and also who they know. A big part of it is it's a little bit like detective work. Uh, we want to follow those leads in order to get to the right candidates. So we're always going to ask people who are the best people you've ever worked with? Who do you look up to? Who do you admire? Who do you think we should reach out to network on this opportunity? Who might have some ideas for us? It isn't always about just put the role in front of them and get their interest. It really is a longer term play to understand where people's strengths are, what they're looking for, what their motivation is, what their goals are, and then when we have an opportunity that aligns with that, that's when we're going to have the conversation.
Yeah, it's to take that a step further, when you said you're not selling it to them and you explained that well, but at some point when they're once they know either the position or the or at least have an idea of where this is going, do they people that work at that level, there must be a level of that they have to do an interview as well, that they have the questions to see if it's the right fit. It seems like that would be a very it's a very delicate thing to manage because you obviously don't have the CEO or the directors of a company sitting there in that meeting with your when you're talking, and they're going to be asking questions trying to get a feel of the culture of the company. That must be part of the process.
Yeah, very much. And it goes back to really that due diligence up front. We need to be prepared for those conversations because you only get one shot. You get one shot to make a first impression in life. And we need to be prepared to answer those questions. We need to have as much data as we can. And we also need to know what we can share and what we can't share. A lot of the information is
Yeah.
confidential. And so probably more often than not, we also have folks sign NDAs and take them through a confidential process. But it usually isn't one phone call. It's an initial call. You have a conversation. They're going to go away, think about it. You have a second conversation. You learn a little bit more. You share a little bit more. It really is a lot of back and forth. And at some point, our client is also going to get involved. And there's some things we simply can't speak to. We're not inside the company. And that's where the next step would come in with a proper interview with our client.
Mm.
And that's usually a multi-stage process as well with a number of stakeholders involved.
I mean, the world it has changed over the last, I mean, 20, 30 years, uh, maybe more drastically in some ways than it ever has, purely from a technology standpoint. But also there is different hiring criterias now. And how much has that affected your approach? You things like the situation we coming into 2020 with everything being shut down, that's still spilled into 2021. When people watch this interview at different times throughout the year, we'll be at different stages of that. There's things like diversity mandates that are coming into play in company, even for the for publicly traded companies, that's coming into effect. So, how much has that landscape really started to shift from your perspective, being in the position that you're in?
There's no denying there's been incredible change and there continues to be a lot of change, and I don't think it's going to slow down anytime soon. um, the only thing, one of the only things that companies can really control is who they bring through the front door, who they hire. And that really sets the stage for their performance. And thankfully, I think a lot of organizations are getting a lot more sophisticated and are spending a lot more time and energy thinking about the people that they're going to hire and the impact that's going to make on the companies. And that's right where we fall into it. Because it makes a difference. If you hire A players, you're going to perform at a higher level. And the research shows that A players will hire more A players,
Mhm.
whereas if you start to hire B and C players, they're not going to want to hire folks that are stronger performers than themselves. So
Right.
you end up in this cycle where it's really hard to get out of. where you just end up with underperforming and underwhelming individuals. And you touched on one thing that really is changing, and that's the diversity challenges. And we've been having these conversations for years, particularly at the board level, and it's now truly. It could be somewhat careful how I say this. We would sit in on a kickoff meeting to kick off a search, and our clients would talk about diversity and the importance of diversity, not only gender or race, but also diversity of experience and diversity of thought, and how important it was. And we will present a short list. And in the past, 9 out of 10 times, they would still go forward with that person that looks and sounds and feels just like everybody else. It's really changing now. You cannot argue that diversity is not going to lead to higher profitability and more success for your company. So it's quite exciting because our clients are actually, for the first time, really seeking it, and they're expecting diverse shortlists. Over the last year, 43% of our placements have been diverse candidates, which is something we're really proud of, and it's only going to continue to increase, which it's about time.
Does it open the door? Does it make your job easier because you're not having to work in sort of this cookie cutter look, sounds, feels, that kind of thing? Feels, wow. There's but you know what I mean? Is there that does it open up the opportunities you have to
Yeah,
connect with these?
in some ways, in some ways, opening the candidate pool, um, you, can make it easier, but at the same time, it also complicates it because now there's more candidates you've got to sift through in order to truly find the best. And that is the goal. The goal is always to find the best. You want to do that with a diverse slate, but you don't simply want to hire someone because they are diverse. And so that becomes the challenge: is how do you still get the absolute best person? And it takes more work and more energy. And in this world, we're also looking further afield. People are don't necessarily need to be in the same place and going into the office every day, and that's a trend that's likely going to continue. So we've had a number of clients over the past several months that historically it would have never been a conversation whether this person can work remotely or travel at that senior level.
Right.
We're finding a lot of folks are much more open to it. Once travel opens up again, they're still going to need to hop on an airplane and have a lot of FaceTime. But do they need to live in Vancouver? Do they need to live in Calgary? Do they need to live in Canada? I don't know. Things are changing.
Yeah. Well, going a little more into the diversity side, but on that skill set level, that must be a shift as well, because companies, of course, are with these new setups, people working remotely, technology playing such a factor in so many companies. There must be a new mandate, well, is there a new mandate for people at that top level to have an understanding of? I mean, we do so many technology episodes on this show that it would seem that if I was building an executive team, I'd want people that had a certain understanding of this, because it seems like you're needing a different set of leaders, or at least a more of a mixture of leadership to understand some of this new technology and sort of these systems that are coming into place that are operating these large companies now, or any size of company.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Jared. And a lot of it's industry specific. And we have because of our size, we're one of the largest search firms globally, certainly one of the largest private search firms globally. And that allows us, with our nearly 200 partners around the world, to touch a lot of different industries. Here in Western Canada, historically, a lot of our work has been energy, and I'm based in Calgary, so that's natural. A lot of mining, a lot of oil and gas, upstream, downstream, and midstream. And if we look at some of these industries, like energy, for example, they've been slower to adapt and slower to adopt some of these technologies. And that is changing, and it's changing rapidly. Um, it can no longer be something you can push off to the side of your desk and hope it's going to go away. It doesn't matter what industry you're in now. You need to be on top of these things, and it starts at the top. And so, not only a CEO, but also at the board level. We're finding with board searches that our clients are expecting a lot more astute board members that really understand the world today, not the world 10 years ago.
Mhm. It must be a challenge because let's say, and I've been around a lot of people that they're actually they're fairly open-minded type people. They're people that work well with anybody across the board. But if you've developed sort of a culture within your company, let's say you're out in a more rural town, like a Red Deer out of Alberta, let's say, it it must be a challenge to go, okay, we're going to try to expand our diversity. And I don't just mean race and gender and things like that, but I mean across the board. That must be a real challenge and a conversation that when you're talking to them, they really are looking to you for support, because it's not an easy thing if you spend 50 years running a company sort of in your little bubble. We just recently had a guest talk about that bubble you get into as a company. I mean, that must be quite a challenging conversation that they're having with you, some of these companies.
Yeah, you're right. I think the conversation is probably more challenging than the reality of doing it.
Hmm.
Um, there are a lot of very strong people that are drawing that experience and that knowledge from different places. And if we use Red Deer as an example, you've got a city that really has been built on oil field services.
Hmm.
And for a lot of years, they're you, you know everyone in that space, they probably came from a very similar background. And that's not necessarily the case anymore. And I think a lot of folks at that more senior level, um, they might not be as aware of what else is out there because they've been in their bubble.
Right.
But if we can pop that bubble and expose them to what the world looks like today, I think they would be pleasantly surprised. Um, and a lot of our clients, and truthfully, maybe it's not most companies, but a lot of the companies that work with us are more progressive. They're more sophisticated. They're ready for a change. They're open for it. So that conversation doesn't need to be as difficult as some might think.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting it's an interesting topic. We probably could do a couple shows on it, but um, I wanted to just be sort of we get to the tail end of this interview. I wanted to get a was the did you start out with DHR? They're based out of Chicago, right? Is that their headquarters? And then did you how did they end up, because do they have a large presence in Canada? I'm just trying to understand the setup sort of as we just tail off the interview. What is the how did DHR move in to the Canadian market?
They've been in Canada for a while. Maybe going back a little bit further. Starting in 1989 in Chicago, and growing and growing from there to nearly 30 countries now. Nearly 60 offices around the world. Um, Toronto was established in Canada, and it has been for a number of years with a very strong team there. Western Canada didn't have as much of a presence, and I, at the time, was working with a couple of partners who are still my partners today. We were running a boutique firm in Calgary, um, quite successfully. We were having fun. We were doing great things. We'd won a couple of best workplace awards, and um, we were really proud of the culture we built internally, and also the work that we were doing for our clients, and being invited back, which is really how we measure our success from those clients. And we weren't thinking about a move. Just like so many of the candidates we tap on the shoulder, I was tapped on the shoulder, and DHR was looking to expand. And this was the tail end of 2015.
Okay.
And ultimately, we said no. We were quite content, but we had a few conversations, and throughout those conversations, it actually made a lot of sense. the family like feel at DHR, the fact that collaboration really is ingrained. So often in search, you get people worried about their piece of the pie instead of realizing you can make the pie bigger and everyone will benefit. So the collaboration piece was really important, and the ability to leverage the global platform and step out of the work we were doing, which at the time really was focused predominantly in Alberta. Um, uh, so we jumped on board, and in 2016 we sold our firm to DHR. We moved over, still the same partners today, and we haven't looked back. And maybe I shouldn't say this on a recording, but it's it's truly one of the most uneventful acquisitions, because we're the same team doing the same work that we've always enjoyed doing. Uh, but we can now describe ourselves as the largest of the boutique firms and the smallest of the big global firms. So we really have the best of both worlds. Um, uh, and it's also allowed us to step into so many other industries, which has certainly helped us. Talking about diversification, um, diversification of the business has been so important to us over the last several years. Being able to expand beyond only energy, it's still a very large part of what we do, energy mining. But cannabis, for example, we were the first global firm to set up a dedicated cannabis practice that we set up in 2017, and are able to do work all over. We could have never done that as a little boutique. We wouldn't have
Right.
had the resources or the manpower, and so that's how we've come to be where we are today.
You said something. I'm glad you said it. That it was a boring acquisition, which is an interesting term. One I actually haven't heard before. But the uh, but it leads to the question. I mean, that for that to happen, there has to be a lot of level heads that are prevailing in that, because when you've got your own company and someone's trying to buy it, and then you're going to still work with them. There's a lot of layers to that. How did you sort of approach it, to be able to make that a smooth transition and productive for your partners, for DHR, for yourself? How that process, however long it took, how did you approach it?
Um, yeah, I haven't thought of that before, but it actually is. Maybe it's easier for us because it's what we expect people to do every single day when we're pulling people out of one place and putting them in another. And so maybe it's not as significant event for us. I think what we did was we took the time. We did not rush into it, and I think it's always a different situation when you're not your hand isn't being forced. We didn't need to sell, and we took our time to come to that decision over a period of several months and hundreds of conversations. And we also engaged our team. We really wanted to make sure everyone. I mean, that was one of the conditions we had, that we were not going unless we brought our entire team with us. Everybody was going to have a role and was going to have a guaranteed role in the future. We did not want to. I mean, you hear horror stories, in the world of M&A, and in a lot of those instances, they actually end up with decreased shareholder value, and we did not want that to happen. So we spent our time to do it right, and because of that, and a little bit of luck, there's always a leap of faith involved, but it worked out, and the assessment we made of our new partners was spot on, and we haven't looked back. We've been excited to work with them, and we've been able to do better work because we're larger.
I think that's a good place to end the interview. We covered a lot of stuff, and I thought y- doing an interview like this is it's there are other competitors out there in your space, like any business, and I wanted to be able to talk about the people. I wanted to be able to sort of hear how you approached and interacted, and you know, I guess to finish off, I would ask, for you dealing with people, and I've asked similar questions before to people, and I always get different types of answers on it. Is it something that you have developed that ability to take your time, build those relationships, communicate with people. You're not selling to them, but sort of finding if it's the right fit, and going through all these processes that you've had to go through your career. How much of it has it been developed, and how much of it is just naturally how you are as an individual?
I don't know. Is probably the quick answer. It's probably a combination of both. No one goes to university thinking I want to be a headhunter. It's one of those careers that people stumble into, and
Mm,
I think people stumble into it because they have innate characteristics that draw them to it. You have to be a people person. You have to be excited to talk to people, to learn about people, to understand their journey, and if you're not going to get anywhere. And I think that the challenge a lot of folks have that step into the world of search is they step into it for the wrong reasons. They're chasing dollars, and they're always chasing the next search. They're chasing a client that is going to give them a mandate instead of focusing on building really strong relationships with candidates. Uh, the work will come, the dollars will come, but you have to start with treating candidates well, from start to finish. And some of these relationships take years and years and years to cultivate. I just kicked off a search this week for a CEO of an upstream oil and gas company, and it's the first search I've done with this individual. And I first met her over 10 years ago,
wow.
and have stayed in touch and have grown into a friendship. And it worked out, but that was never the goal. And I think that's the difference is you have to be interested in people, in nurturing relationships, and everything else falls into place. But if you go into it for the wrong reasons, maybe you can develop some skills and be good at it, but part of it has to already be within you.
Yeah, it has to. Yeah, I would think to work at the level you do and with the people, there has to be a level of a natural desire. You must get a little sick of all the Zoom calls nowadays.
um, yeah, I do about at least 15 a day.
Oh my.
And I don't. And I've had this conversation with a lot of people that, face to face is always my preference.
Yeah.
Uh, I have coffee cards loaded for every coffee shop in town. That's where I used to spend my life. And I miss that. I miss interacting with people. But this technology is pretty good.
Good.
And you know what? It's not the same, but it's still a way to connect with people. And I think it's a lot better than if we were in 1917 going through something similar, and
Right.
not having this technology. So I'll take Zoom all day long. It still gets me in front of people and gives me that interaction that I crave.
That is a very good point. Thank you very much for coming on the show. I enjoyed doing the interview. I hope as we grow as a company, we get to work with your firm. You can just leading up to the interview, it says so much about the guest. You've just been on it and working with us and developing the structure for it. So we appreciate you coming on the show, and I hope to have you back.
Well, thanks, Jared. I'll hold you to that. We'll look forward to building your team when you're ready.
Okay, thank you very much.
Bye bye.
Okay. That was a fun interview. I like it when I just get to enjoy the interview. So
Well,
often the so often the technology is so complicated on some
I
stuff
know.
that I just feel lost half the time. Um,
and I got to introduce my dogs. So what more could you
well,
want?
we didn't get to see them. We didn't
Well,
I
next
know.
next
watch that bookcase come down as they all come in.
I'll send you a picture you can put in if you want.
Ooh, yes.
Please do.
Okay,
Seriously,
We
please
can
I'll
do.
put
send
them in.
I'll send you a photo.
And
Fabulous.
we should do one of those, those how you used to do the little intro, those clips,
Uh-huh.
and then we can get the dogs in right at
Yeah,
the clips.
absolutely.
Um, Gowdy,
Special guests.
special guests. Yeah. Special episodes. Yeah.
Mascots.
Um, Gowdy, where can people follow, like, share, comment, and so on?
Well, definitely subscribe to our YouTube channel. We've got 2 episodes every week is kind of where we're at now. Moving on to 3, so that will be so fun.
I don't know, Gary.
I'm excited. Also, you can listen to us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, pretty much everywhere. Also, follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn. Or sorry, LinkedIn. Wow, at Crownsman P.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you'd like to be a guest, either on the Crownsman Show, Crownsman Energy, or Mining Now, you can contact us info@crownsman.com.
And I should mention, I've been getting quite a few emails about guests wanting to like come on in the spring. So if you're planning to come on in the spring, let us know now, because right now I think we're booked until, well, you might be watching this in April, but as of now, if you're watching this today, if you're one of the
Yeah.
followers, we're booked right until the into April. So
Yeah.
talk to us now to get on the spring, or else
Yeah,
we'll be booking you for the summer.
we get booked pretty quickly. And so, yeah, the sooner you call, the sooner you contact us,
We'll get you
is
in.
better. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you, Brian, for coming on the show. It was a fun interview, and we will see you on the next episode of the Crownsmen Show.